Ha. Okay, I think we made it. As I have said many times before, welcome to Sew Together Tuesday. We always have tech issues. Not always, but today we have a few little issues. Let me know if you can hear us. We just had a little issue with the mic, and so I want to make sure that everybody can hear me before we get too far in here. So we have some thumbs up. So you can hear me. Can you hear me now? Okay. I am Teresa Coates. I'm the National Educator for Shannon Fabrics. Are we getting any thumbs up there, Hawk?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna hope for some. I lost my feed as well, so I can't see any of the comments or anything else. Like, yeah, we just had just a moment in the last 90 seconds so where everything sort of went sideways on us. So anyway, if we can get some thumbs up that you can hear me, that would be great. I appreciate it. Okay, thank you. So Hawk is definitely back to playing comment sharer with me today. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Hawk. Thank you for being here. And we'll do our best. So you just gotta roll with the punches, right? So anyway, I'm Teresa Coates. I'm the National Educator for Shannon Fabrics, and we are back with another episode or another show, another week of Sew Together Tuesday. Today we're doing a little something different. Normally we work with Cuddle and Luxe Cuddle fabric, and today we are bringing back our Embrace fabric. So we haven't worked with this for a while. I'm excited to do it. And if you haven't seen it before, this is your time to get to know Embrace Double Gauze a little bit better. So this is a cotton fabric that we make, and we're going to make this cute little blanket. Let me show you what we're going to make. I'm just going to throw some stuff on the floor first. Okay, so we're making this little blanket. Let's see if we can get the corner. So this blanket is Embrace on the body of the blanket and then Cuddle for the binding. So if you have not worked with Embrace before, this will be a great little lesson on that. And if you've been looking to do a Luxe Cuddle binding, this is the one that you want to watch too, because we're going to talk about that and how that works and how easy it actually is to do. Okay, so we should have a list of ingredients that'll come up. Since I can't see what's happening, we're going to have a list of things that we are supposed to have. I'm going to grab my pattern really quick so I can read it, because if you download the pattern, you can get it on our blog, and you can get the pattern and it'll tell you everything you need, but you're going to want to make sure you have, in no particular order since I can't see it, you're going to want a print double gauze and a solid and then a snow. And I'm going to explain now why we want 3 different gauzes for this. Okay, and then you're going to want a 1/4 yard of Luxe Cuddle. I used Galaxy Ginger for the blanket that I did. The one I'm going to do today, I'm going to show you my favorite binding fabric, which is actually weave. And that's my favorite. We'll talk about that in a bit. You're also going to want to have polyester thread. You can use cotton thread for working with the Embrace, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. You want to have the stretch needle, micro serrated scissors, rotary cutter, cutting mat, flower head pins. I love the ones from Clover. You want to have fabric clips for the binding, your walking foot, stiletto. Basting spray is optional, and if you want to, you can also use some spray starch with gauze. All right. Okay. Are we back? Okay. It's so weird. I've really got used to the way we were doing it that I could actually see what was happening, and now I'm just flying blind again. So anyway, those are the things you're going to want for this blanket. So let's talk about Embrace first. Just give you a little bit of an overview about it and how we work with it. So Embrace, like I said, it's 100% cotton. And it is a completely different fabric than all of the Cuddle fabric. So they're polyester, they're a knit. This is cotton and it's a woven. So we're going to bring this up and see if you can see this. I have the layers together and I'm hoping that'll let you see the little lines that are on here. So these are like little woven grid lines. That is how they kind of put it together. And it's actually, when we say it's double gauze, let me see if I can grab the corner and show you guys. It really is 2 little layers of double gauze. Okay, so it's it's 2 thin layers of gauze that are put together and becomes double gauze. So you can see here's the 1 layer, there's 2 of them. These little cross lines in here are what hold it together. What these cross lines also do is give us a grain line. So if you're an apparel sewer, you know that grain lines are important. In a lot of the things we do, it doesn't really matter. But in this one, we're going to use this to cut. So this also harkens to when you are getting this cut at the store. So when you're getting this cut at the store, make sure that they are cutting it on these lines. When it's rolled onto the bolt, it can often twist just a little bit. And so it can sort of get pulled a little when when it's getting put on the bolt, because the double enrolling machine is pretty cool, and it takes one layer and then it kind of folds it up over and brings it back down and then rolls it around the bolt. So what happens is the fabric shifts just a little bit. And if you've ever torn your fabric after it's been cut at the store, you'll note that it is often cut off grain as well. The double gauze, because it's such a like an open weave, it can really get off pretty far, and by, a couple of inches. And so you want to make sure that when the store is cutting it for you, that you have them cut it on the line. So have them open it up and cut it a single layer. Okay. So that's a good store who've worked with gauze for a long time. They totally know that, and they should be cutting it right. But you might find an employee who doesn't know. So you can help educate them. So make sure that it's cut on the lines. And when we do this ourselves, we're going to cut it on those grain lines as well. Okay. All right, so it's 100% cotton. Like I said, you could use Aurifil thread. I'm going to show you this one. This is a box that is from Aurifil that uses the Sweet Melody collection, which isn't what we're using today, but we have a lot of the Embrace double gauze with her prints on it, and all of these colors actually coordinate really well, including the two that are out of the box that work really well for this design too, because the cute little fox is a great color, and it's full of all sorts of pretty colors. All right, so these work really well on Embrace. Because we're combining it with the Luxe Cuddle today, I'm going to stick with the polyester thread. But just so you know, when you're working with Embrace, cotton thread is super good for it, and it's really good, especially if you're making like apparel or you're doing small children's projects. Using it with the cotton thread is great. Okay, I'm going to move this back over here by our cute little mug. Okay, all right. Now it looks like it's on display and not just in the way. Okay, so the thread is great. Also for the fabric, it is machine washable, machine dryable, all that good stuff. The prints are more crinkly. No, the prints are less crinkly than the solids. So solids will crinkle a little bit more. It really doesn't make any difference in what you're doing. Just be aware that that's something that changes with the amount of print that's on it. So we're going to deal with a print today, a solid, and then the snow. When I'm doing this, you could absolutely do this blanket with just 2 layers. But I tell you this with yes, please do it with the white in the middle. Because what happens is when you put that white in the middle, I'm just going to put these 2 layers out. Move my little cloth, that's for later. So if I put these out and I put my gray fabric down first, okay, and I use my cute little print and I put that over the top, you're going to see, clearly one's been cut out to size and one hasn't, you're going to see that the gray kind of comes through this a little bit and kind of just darkens it up. You might not be able to tell too much, but let me put the white in between and I'll show you the difference. Okay, so I'm going to put a white down and then we'll put the print down. And it makes a huge difference. Okay, so this is a big difference. And I think you can probably,
there it is.
You can probably see that it changes the way that the print shows up. So it's technically, you could absolutely do it with a colored background and it shows through. I just prefer having the white behind it so that it really pops and stays very true to the color that I want it to be. So that's true with all of them. I always do them with 3. It also gives it a little bit more heft. So there's something to that 3-layer thing that makes it a little extra. Aren't those foxes just the cutest, and little owls? There's a little hedgehog. Did you show them that yet? They're so cute. Little feathers. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. I love this fabric. It's adorable. So we have a whole bunch of different prints and we have a bunch of different solids. Pick what you want and then find 2 coordinating ones. You could also do it the same on both sides. Okay, so if you wanted to print on both sides, you absolutely could do that. I would still put the white in the middle. Like I said, that's it's kind of twofold because it gives it a little bit more heft and more weight to it, which is really nice. And the other is that it keeps the colors a little bit more true. Okay, so we're going to do that. So the first thing we want to do is prep our Embrace fabrics. I'm going to move the blanket that we're doing. And what I want to do is I'm going to iron them first. Okay, so we don't really iron Cuddle. So like I said, everything we do with Cuddle is kind of a little different when we work with Embrace. So we're going to iron the fabric out first, get it nice and straight. I have cut one of these prints and I'm just doing a small one today. I'm not even sure how big I cut this. I'll have to measure it. We're just doing a small one today so I can show you how to do it, but you're going to cut it the size that you want it. Embrace is 50 inches wide. When I did the bigger blanket, it says to cut it 46 inches in the pattern, which you can absolutely do. I just left the selvages on because that's the way I am. And then I just measured the other direction as far as I wanted it to go. So you can absolutely do the same. And you just cut it out the size you want. So get one that is the size that you want. And then we're going to work on getting the other two to the same size. Each of these little squares that are on there are approximately 1 inch. So I say approximately because they do vary slightly and they don't always measure the same both directions. So when you're working with this, you want to make sure that you have your fabric going in the same direction. So let me get my iron going. So this is a little Elisa. Oh, I totally forgot, you guys. I get so excited about this and I want to tell you everything and then I forget. So we have a giveaway today. Of course, if you share the video, then we'll give away a kit at the end to make this blanket. And I'll give you the same fabric that I'm working with today. That is not a kit per se, but I will send you that fabric so you can make one just like mine. And then Elisa is actually giving away one of these cute little travel irons. I love these guys. So if you follow me on Instagram or anything, you see that I use my big guy all the time, and I love it. And it's the one with the little auto lift. This is the little travel iron, and they are giving away one of these, and I think they're about $50 retail, so it's a super great giveaway. And it is a fabulous little thing. So it has a one that you can put in here to store it, flip it over, and that's what you set it on to not, you know, burn your board or anything. Though I will tell you, this one doesn't have an auto turn off. So I just leave it at a lower temperature and then make sure to unplug it when I'm done. Okay. So I'm just going to iron out my fabric really quick so I can make sure it's nice and flat. You can see that the gray is not as wrinkly as the white, but I'm just going to get them nice and flat and then we'll lay them together and I will cut them. Okay. So I like to iron them out when I'm doing this project because I want the sizes to be pretty similar. So they're not going to be exact, but they will be close. And that's important. So one of the things you can do too is if you are working with the gauze and it is a little bit wibbly for you and you don't really like that, you can absolutely use like Best Press or a starch and get it to be a little bit stiffer. And then when you wash it, it just washes right out. Okay, super duper easy. So there's that one. I'm going to put that to the side and then I will iron the white one. And you can see the white has no dyes or anything in it. So it's already crinklier than the gray was when we started. So I like to iron them out so that they will be all just as flat. Because when you measure them, if they're not ironed flat, they're going to actually be different measurements because of that crinkle. Okay. So one of the questions, if you have any questions about the gauze, let me know. And then, you know, Hawk can pass it on. Because one of the things that people ask is, does it shrink? And it shrinks slightly, but mostly what it does is it crinkles up. So when it crinkles, it gets smaller. So you can see that when it's all crinkly here, it's, you know, I don't know, it gets smaller. It'll measure less. It won't be as long, but it actually is the same. It just needs to be ironed out flat. Okay. So I'm going to do that first. And I always do that, whether I'm working with apparel or with the little blankets. Okay. It does have little steam things that you just hold. Let's see, I don't know if there's any water in it. Yeah, there's no water in it. But it does have steam capabilities, which is awesome. And gauze loves the steam. So because it's 100% cotton. All right. So now those are straighter. If I wanted to get them really straight, do I have? Oh, I do have Best Press. So that's what this stuff is. Okay, so this stuff works really, really well for double gauze. I'll just spray a little and show you how it works. One of the things about using it is it's not starch, and people don't really always love starch. I, on the other hand, do. But spray it, let it soak in for a minute. That's the same with whether you're using starch or a starch alternative. Okay, and then we're just going to press it. That one has a nice little lavender smell. Some little cuddle dust. Okay, you can see how much flatter that keeps it when I've sprayed it with the Best Press. Okay, nice and neat. This will make it a little bit, give it a little bit more of a hand to it. I don't know if you can see the difference, but this is like real floppy and this isn't quite as floppy. Okay, so you can see this has a little more crease in it when I bend it. And that actually makes it a little bit easier to work with if you are uncomfortable with working with such free-flowing fabric. Okay. Once you've worked with it a little bit, you actually get pretty used to it and it's not a big deal. Oh, I wanted to iron those all together. Sorry. Let me just throw things around too. Sorry. It's probably not as loud on camera as it is here. That was really loud. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to press these together so that they are the same size. So I'm going to do them one at a time with the one that I already did. Okay, so one of the things that I like to do is I will actually keep the selvage on. You don't have to, but I'm gonna keep it on there. And mostly I do that so I can remember which side is the selvage. Okay, we'll see if we can get these to kind of match up. Because the selvage side and the widthwise side, they are not always, like I said, the squares are not actually super square sometimes. And so you'll end up with them not quite matching. Okay, so this one has the selvage on this side, this one has the selvage on this side. What I did is I lined it up along here, and I could see those little grain lines in there match pretty well. So I'm just going to fold this back, and I'm going to cut right along that line. See if I can get that out of my way. And I just cut all the way along. You can absolutely use your rotary cutter with that. But I love my kinds. Just don't cut your ironing board. Yeah, just don't cut the ironing board. Please, please, if you're going to cut it with a rotary cutter, put a mat underneath it. Yes. I always think, like, do we have to put the self-healing mat listed? But yes, because if you're going to use a rotary cutter, make sure that you're putting it on the board first, for sure. Okay, so now I've got it measured that way. So now I want to go across the bottom. So I'm going to make sure that that's all nice and even. Find the one that it matches along there, basically. So let me see. Yep. So what I want is I'm trying to make sure that these lines are kind of going across. So I'm not going to be super picky about it, but I mean, that's a big difference. So we want to make sure that that whole inch difference there, we want to make sure that they're basically on the same line, and then we'll make them fit. Okay. Can you see that line in there at all? Mm-hmm. Okay. Sometimes it's hard to see. I will tell you that the navy and the black are the hardest, the lighter the fabric. So if you're using a white fabric, use a dark board underneath. You'll see it better. If you have a dark fabric, then you can use a light board, and it will help a lot. Okay, so now I've got it that way, and now lay it here. And this one, if I look at this selvage, it looks like this selvage actually cuts off just about where the inch line is supposed to be. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that right along here. With this one, I don't mind cutting it off, and I kind of do just check so I can see that these width bits are about the same. So I'm going to cut that. With this, because it is a print, I can tell which way the grain is going. Obviously, this is the top to bottom section here. When I have a solid, it's a little bit harder to tell. So I try to keep them marked in some way, and the selvage is often a good way of doing that. So now I'm just going to cut it so that the gray is the same. So we say to cut a 46-inch square, and really what I do is cut one the size I wanted and then cut the others to match. I have definitely tried to do this where I cut them all the same size, and then when I get to the point of matching them all together, guess what? They don't match. This will surprise no one who knows me very well. Measuring things is hard sometimes. So, okay, so now we're going to lay the third one down. And again, it has the selvage, so I know which one is top and which one is bottom. It's been cut along the lines for the top and the side, or the top and the side. So I'm going to try to get that out fairly straight and then lay my other ones on top of it. And get those to match in the same way. Okay. And it basically just takes a little bit of scritching, kind of moving things where you want them to be to get them to all fit. Okay, so I'm going to cut up this side first because this one is easier for me to see where the match is. And I can sort of see that line just because of the print on my ironing board here. It's easy to see that. Pink. Okay, and these are the Kai 7250s. I have the 7280s. The SEs are my favorite, but they're downstairs still. But they work really, the Kai scissors work really, really well for this. Okay, so if I kind of stretch this and give it a little, see where I'm at, looks like this is the line that's going to match it. So I'm just going to cut along this line. Okay, so you'll see it doesn't seem like it's cutting very straight. And don't worry about that. Just cut it on that line. If you cut it on the line, it'll all work out. Okay, so now we're going to keep our scraps. And at the end, I'll show you something else that you can do with them. If you don't let me forget. Okay, Hawk? Okay, thanks.
Got it.
Okay, scrap buster. Because at the end, we do have some little scraps and we got some things we could do. So now all three are about the same size. Okay, so this is an easier way of doing it for me than to measure it out. You are more than welcome if you want to like count out the squares to get to 46 squares. I like to just do that once and then measure them comparatively from there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, I want to base this, but I'm going to do that in a second actually. Let's get the binding ready. So we just have all of our cutting ready to go. So I'm going to fold these all together. Put that aside. Put my ironing board away. And then we've got the, oh, I hurried and got these cut. So let me show you. So I'm going to use this one today, which is the weave fabric. Okay, it's my favorite binding, and I think it's going to look really nice with this. Okay, so we're going to use these two to make them. But let me show you how you do it out of the Galaxy. So I just want to show you just a little bit, because if you're new to working with Cuddle, this is a question that we get a lot, is how do you cut this stuff so it's not so messy? It's just going to be a little bit messy because it's a plush fabric, but there are definitely ways that we have figured out how to make it less messy. So one of them is I'm going to measure it and I'm going to mark it before I do anything else. Let me find my Sharpie. Thanks. It's sort of hidden over there, actually. Let's see if I have a, no. Let's see if I had a black one available. I have all the colors, but not black. So this is my creative grids ruler, and I'll tell you this little line on here is great because it's actually the 1 3/4 inch mark, which is how big we cut Cuddle bindings. So even though it's got a little broken corner, I keep it because it's so perfect. I just don't get up to that corner. But this little line on here is at 1 3/4, which is awesome. All right, let's see if the silver will show on here. Okay. Oh yeah. So I just use a Sharpie of some sort. Okay, if it's dark, I use the silver usually. All right, so now we've got our little mark on here. I'm not going to cut out very much of this because I'm not going to use it today. I'm going to use the other, but I wanted to show you how I do this. So I'm going to mark all of this, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut it. So you could cut this with a rotary cutter. Absolutely. It would just make a huge mess. You can cut it with scissors. It'll be the same mess. Or you can cut it with a blade or some micro serrated scissors. This is the Olfa SAC-1 blade, which I love. And it works really, really well for cutting this kind of fabric. So we just use the little sharp point. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to hold some tension on this. So I'm going to start up here where my line is. I'm going to hold some tension on it, and I'm going to drag this blade right down the back of it. And you can see I keep it really low to the fabric. So I'm not trying to drag it like this and drag the tip, because all that does is push it into your board. So what I'm doing is trying to drag along more the flatter side of it along this. Okay. And as I do that, it cuts just the backing fabric, or mostly just the backing fabric. And then it leaves all of this along the edge. So when you cut this with a rotary cutter, all of this gets cut off on both of these edges. So you have a really nice smooth edge, which is what this edge is here. Okay, this one's been cut with a rotary cutter. This one is nice and smooth. This one is done with the blade, and you can see all these fibers stay on there. What that does is it'll give you a nice edge that you can turn over for your self-binding or for your binding. It'll give you this nice soft edge to it. It also keeps all of this stuff from floating around your sewing room. Okay, so I really recommend that. The other thing you can do is you can use some micro serrated scissors. These are the ones from Kai. Okay, and then you're just going to stick this right underneath the very edge of your fabric and just take little bitty snips all the way down. And that's going to do the same sort of thing. Okay.
Can we buy replacement blades for those?
Yes, you absolutely can.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are a few shops who sell both the blade and the replacement blades. And the replacement blades, let me see if I can find my pack here. I don't know what happened to them, darn it. So yeah, oh, there they are. Okay. This is what the replacement blades look like. So you get them in a pack like this, and then they have all of these blades inside that you replace them with. So you can see I've been using them, and I think there's 8 in there. So it says 10. See if I can find a number on there. Anyway, there's a bunch of them in there. And yeah, they work really, really well. So you can buy the blade or buy the knife, and then you just keep replacing the blades. Works really well. Okay, so both of these methods work really great for cutting the Luxe Cuddle. I prefer this when I'm doing something that I'm going to be binding it, because like I said, this soft edge comes over, all right, which is really nice. All right, let me get those out of the way. I'm going to put this pretty fabric to the side to find a new use for it. Actually, I have one that's coming up, so I know what I'm going to use it for. But what I want to use today is this, which is our Luxe Cuddle weave. And I wrote the color down, and now I can't remember what it is. Silver. Silver. Okay, there we go. So we're using this because I think it's really pretty, and it is my favorite binding fabric. So it's one I like to use all the time. So I'm going to show you why when we get to that point. Okay, so I think that we are ready to sew. Are you ready? We're working. The baby lock is over at spa day today. So it has been for a few days, and she's getting worked on. But today I'm working on the Bernina. So I have a Bernina 535 that I'm working on with the walking foot. So come around. I'm going to show you really quick about the walking foot. So if you are familiar with the baby lock we usually use, it's a different kind of walking foot. This is more of a regular walking foot. I'm going to show you, see if I can get this off here. Okay, so here's the little walking foot. This is the part that people get confused on, and they don't put it on correctly. So make sure that if you are using a walking foot, that you have this over your needle screw, which is this part here. That's the thing you'll loosen to replace your needle. And this little guy has to go over the top. So let's see if we can do this, and I'll try not to block the camera too much. So I just slide this over that. Come on. Okay, maybe I just need to stick my hand over there. Sorry, guys. Okay, and then that comes under. There we go. Okay. And it has this little thing that comes down. So Berninas have like a little thing that sticks out that has to go over, and it's you know, difficult to do when there's cameras and all sorts of stuff here. So anyway, that's what it is. So make sure that this is over that. What that does is, as I let the foot come down, hold my thread, you can see this comes down. So if I do this, you'll see it'll, whoops, it's like, wait, you're sewing. You can see this foot will kind of lift up a little bit. You see that just a little bit? Mm-hmm. That's the walking foot action. If that is not connected, it will not lift at all. It will just sit down there like a regular foot and shove all your fabric forward, which is not what we want to do. Okay, so now I've still got my pieces that I ironed together. I'm going to stick a few little pins in here just so I can keep it where I want it to be. And I'm just going to stitch all the way around the edge. This is just to baste them together. You can absolutely do this on your serger if you have one. The Embrace is wonderful on the serger, and I've used it for lots and lots of projects. Yeah, just stick it on a 3 needle and baste all the way around these edges. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of get these edges to match. I don't really care if the middles match so much as trying to get these edges to match up. So I'm going to kind of keep an eye on that as I'm sewing. Come on, little guy. And it just does not want to move over for me. I need like 6 hands. Okay. So I pin that, and I'm just going to move this as I go. Make sure that it's catching all of the edges. Okay, and I am going to use the walking for this because it's easy. Do I need to on Embrace? No. Okay, and I'm just going to open up my stitch length a little bit because I'm just trying to baste it. I'm going to switch it over to a zigzag. I'm going to make it longer. There we go. All right, there we go. So then I can go along here, and I'm just going to kind of make sure that these are together. Because all I'm doing is just securing this. So if they get off a little, it's fine. and I can kind of keep an eye on how well it's working. If I keep a little tension from the end and get it so that it all pulls flat,
the gray in the
it
center
works.
here?
Oh gosh, it is. Did somebody say that?
Yeah.
They totally did. Thank you. Yes, you're totally right. I laid them together. Oh, goodness gracious, Teresa. Thank you.
Oopsie.
Oopsie. We got to have one, right? All right. You know what we're going to do? We're just going to cut off one more row. Look at that. So it won't be a perfect square, but it'll be close. Thanks, guys.
Good.
You're right.
Good
catch.
Everybody.
Good catch. It happens. Thinking about 12 different things at once. Sheesh. Oh, that's so much better, you guys. Goodness. All right, let's try it again. Wow, look at how much nicer that looks.
And you're just using the stretch needle right now that you usually use for cuddle, but even though this isn't a stretch fabric.
Right, exactly. And you could do, right. And if I were going to do an entire project, so like we did the ruffled edge blanket before, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And that one, I switched the needle out, and I would totally switch it out if I were doing the entire project in the Embrace, because there's no reason to use the stretch needle for it. A universal or universal like 7010 will work great. So it's not going to hurt it either. Okay, so then I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to get these to match up. I'm just going to sort of fidget with them just a little bit. Put my foot down so it'll hold it. I'm going to get these edges to match. So when you're doing this on the serger, you're going to do the same sort of thing. And then I just want to make sure that these will all sort of go together. Okay. And because they're a floppy fabric, don't worry about being super precise. Okay, that's when people get a little bit frustrated. It's because it just keeps moving, and it will, because that's the kind of fabric it is. So you can starch it into submission, or you can just sort of let it be itself. Okay. So I'm going to give this a little tug, make these work together so that these will all be the same size along this edge. So what I found is you don't actually have to baste this all the way around, but really the idea of trying to work with the cuddle and all of these as they, are free flowing is just a little more than I want. So I'm going to get these to come together same way. Work my way over to the other edge. I'm so glad somebody saw that gray in there and said that.
It wasn't just somebody, it was everybody.
Everybody was like, wait, Teresa, you're messing up. And I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And I don't always see the comments as timely as that. So it worked out really well.
That worked out really well. Thank you. I appreciate it. Somebody's got to keep me in check. Whew.
So what length and stitch are you using right now to do this basting?
Mine is a 3 wide and 3.6 long. Is that no opposite? 3.6 wide, 3 long. I just randomly grabbed a bigger zigzag because I didn't want to take a ton of time.
And you can use the serger.
Yes, you can absolutely use the serger. One of the things too is with the gauze, when you're sewing it, if you are having trouble with it puckering, you just shrink your stitches. So it's, like I said, everything about it is kind of the opposite of cuddle, as we always say, lengthen your stitches, lengthen your stitches. And on this one, we're going to shrink our stitches. So it makes them smaller and it won't gather so much. Sometimes that happens. Okay. Get back on the fabric. And then we're going to do the same thing and get this side to match up as well. You can see the gray, I still have the whatever that stuff is, selfish, that stuff on the side of the fabric. It's still there, and that is okay. It's going to all get covered up by the binding.
I think I thought we were going to do some sort of crazy inside out thing.
Oh,
I actually haven't seen this project sewn yet, start to finish either, so I am learning. So I wasn't paying attention to.
And I was thinking about stitch length and how to get the walking foot on. Jeez, what would I do without you guys? Thanks. I appreciate it.
This definitely qualifies as a see something, say something moment.
Really, it does, and I appreciate it. All right, so we're just going to clip that. So now we've got it basically basted all the way around, okay? So now I've got my little blanket.
Nice.
We're going to bind this with the Cuddle fabric. You could absolutely bind this with a cotton if you really like, just a regular cotton one. You could use a knit jersey one. So a lot of different things you could do it with. We did it before where we didn't bind it at all. We sewed it together and then flipped it inside out, which would have been what you were thinking about, Hawk. Was like, we did it before and then we just turned it inside out. That's what we did with the ruffled edge blanket. So this is the little mini sample we made with that. We sewed them together. This is the same way in that it has a white in the middle. So there's 3 layers here, if I can get them to come apart. So there's a the tealy color here, whatever this is. And then one over here, and then white in the middle. And then this has the ruffle stuck into between the layers. Okay, so this is another way that you can do it. Super cute, it's super easy. This one, we're actually going to bind it, which is really fun and a great way of adding a complementary color in it that I really like. So we're going to do the gray one today. So the first thing we're going to do is I cut the binding strips, and they're all 1 3/4 inches. I didn't measure this. Let me see what I did. It's about 18 inches.
Before or after you changed it?
Yeah, it's about 18 inches by, let's see. Oh, I got it perfect. Now it's a square. Now it's 18 by 18. So see, I meant to do that. I wanted to see if you guys were paying attention because now I have a square. So that worked out great. So as I said, like sometimes I don't measure it very carefully and it ends up not being as square as I want it to be. So what I've done is I cut out a couple of strips of binding. One of the things is you want to make sure that you at least have longer than you need, right? So I'm going to need 18, so 20 by 4. So I need about 80 inches. Our Cuddle fabric is 60 inches wide. So the Embrace, remember, is about 50 inches wide. The Cuddle is about 60 inches wide, and that varies between prints and styles. So 58.60 and 48.50 are the differences between theirs. So let me see. I know I cut out one whole strip. So let me see what I've got here. I think this is going to be, okay, that one's going to be about 30 inches. And then do we have enough? So 60, and I need about 80. We've got a little bit more than that, so that's perfect. Okay, so I'm going to put these 2 strips together. What I need to do is I'm going to do them just like I do for a quilt binding. So if you are a cotton quilter, you know how we put binding strips together. I'm going to touch the nap, make sure the nap is going this way, and I'm going to find the other end, make sure the nap is going the other way. If I push the nap, if I were to put this end, for instance, and I push it this way, you can see that they'll react differently. So I want to put the right ends together. So this is the way I always do it, is I put them like literally end to end, pet them, make sure they're going the right direction. And then I'm going to flip them. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to do the same quilt style binding that we would normally do and sew from here to here. I'm going to mark this for you so you guys can see just a little bit better. Generally, I don't mark it. This fabric is kind of fun because it has the straight line, so I can easily tell if this is at a 90 degrees or if I've got it a little bit off. I could totally tell because it has lines in it. Okay. I'm going to see if I can pin through my binding and not through the Embrace, since I've got it on top there. And I'm going to pin it on either side of where I want to stitch it. Okay, so with the Cuddle, we always want to pin as much as we can and then actually remove those pins as little as possible. Okay, so now I'm going to mark this. You see a black Sharpie?
I really don't.
I really don't either. I'm like, what happened to all of my Sharpies? Okay, we're using silver. I have like 800 of them, but you know, not right here right now. Okay, so I'm going to come right here and I'm just going to mark the back of this. There we go. Okay, see if you guys can see that. So right along this line. All right, so generally I don't mark it, I just eyeball it, but if you need to mark it, you totally can, and then we're just going to sew along that line. So you could stay over there for half a second, or we'll just come pin this. I mean, just come sew this, okay? So I'm going to sew from corner to corner. So what I do is I stick my needle down, and then I bump that little intersection in there. Okay, now I'm going to switch my stitch over to a 3 long and a straight stitch. My pin came out, so I'm going to repin because I really want that to hold it right there. So if I pin it this direction where my line is, I can totally just sew in between those lines. My needle moved because I changed the needle position. Okay. And I'm just going to sew right along that line. I'll do a little back stitch if I can. Cut my thread. Okay. All right. So now I've got it sewn right along there. Okay. I'll open it up, make sure it still works, make sure it's going to pet right. That works, and then I'll cut it. Okay, so I always do a double check, triple check, because as you can see, sometimes I think I got it right, and then I didn't. Okay, and I'm just going to cut this seam allowance. I'm going to try to cut it a little bit carefully so we don't have a huge cuddle mess everywhere. And I'm just going to cut it to a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch, but not really a 1/2 inch. So somewhere in between there. And I'm going to cut off those little dog ears because I don't want them there. That one's pretty well gone. Okay, so now I've got a nice long binding strip with a join. Okay, so this is exactly how it's going to work for cotton too, and we'll be able to get those to work out just fine. Trim that just the tiniest. Okay, just so it'll be how I want it. All right. Questions?
Is there a thread weight with the? You're using this the polyester because you're also incorporating cuddle, but is there a thread weight, especially if you use the Aurifil or something for just the Embrace product?
True. I am using good thing because I'm gonna have to change my thread too. So it's a 40 weight is what it is. And that's what I use, just standard thread, not anything exceptional, and definitely not the super thin stuff. So I'm gonna have to switch it out to the Superior, and it's a 50 weight, and so it's a little bit thinner. So as threads, the bigger the number, the smaller the thread is. It's one of those weird things. So 40 weight is generally what it is. Like I said, Superior is 50 weight, and it works fine. What I've noticed is that they get smaller. It's even harder to try to take your threads out, and the bigger ones hide just fine. So I just use those. There are a few polyester threads that are very small that I have used as well from Quilter Select. Okay, so good question. Appreciate it. All right, so now what we're going to do is we have our big binding, and we're going to stick it on. I like to do it from the back and bring it around to the front, and then we'll top stitch it down. You can do it the other direction. It just takes a little bit more practice to get it in the exact right spot. So I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to start from the side. I like to leave the, where the join is, I either leave it on the side or on the bottom. And so I'm going to leave it on the side right now. Another thing to think about is which way, when the binding comes around to the front, which way do you want the nap to flow? I like it to flow toward the front. So the nap is going to go this way instead of this direction. Okay, so when I put this on, it's going to go this way. So I always kind of do like a little test there. Hope that made sense. Because as I sew this on and I bring this around, then the nap will go that way and it'll come over the front. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to leave a little tail here, and I'm going to stick another pin in here, and then I'm going to put a couple more so that it will stay as I go along here. You can absolutely use clips for this too if you would like. It may work really well. So at the end here, when I get down here, I want to stop about a 1/2 inch from the end. So for me, I can sort of eyeball that. Okay, I can use my board. I'm like, all right, barely caught that. It's going to work out just fine though. So I'm going to stop here, and that's where I'll come off the corner. All right, so I'm going to sew from here to here, turn the corner, and then keep going. So are you ready for this, Hawk?
Yes.
All right, let's come around and do this. All right, let me make sure we got everything where it's supposed to be. Not yet. We're going to stitch around, I think, and then we'll change the thread when we do our top. I'm just going to use every little bit of thread that is on that spool. Okay, so I'm going to feed this underneath the walking foot. I've got it on a straight stitch. I'll lift it at 3. We'll see how that works. Should be fine. Again, a reminder that on the back of your machine, you should have you'll be able to drop your presser foot, but you should have it be able to lift up even higher, which works really nicely for being able to get these things in. Okay. So most machines have that. So I'm going to get this in, put my foot down, and take out my pin. Now I just use the side of the walking foot as my 1/2 inch. It's pretty close to it. So I'm just going to use that. And so right along here. Oh, it's behaving so nicely. All right, and I'm just going to keep an eye on the cut edge of my fabric and the cut edge of the blanket fabric and make sure this is staying nice and even. Okay, so now as I get close to this pin, I'm going to get closer. I'm going to take the pin out. And then I'm going to put up my foot, turn it, and I'm going to sew off that corner. So 90 degree or 45 degrees off the corner of the blanket. Okay, you can absolutely use this with your regular quilting binding if you want to. This lets it come up this direction. So what we're going to do is it's coming out here. I'm going to pull it so it comes straight up, and then I'm going to hold fingers and pull it back down. Okay. Now I'm going to be careful here and make sure that I'm catching it with a pin so it'll stay where I want it to be. The other thing that I want to be really careful with is that this fold right here, I can actually see the cut edge. So what happens is that this gets too big and you fold it too far over, you end up with a little pocket on the outside, and that's not what we want. So we're going to fold it so that the edge is here and you can see that cut edge. All right, you guys can see that. Pretty okay because I can see the camera now. All right, so I'm going to leave this pin in here. And I'm going to come back around. I'm going to put this underneath. And I'm going to put it all the way underneath the foot. Get my threads out of the way. Get this all the way under the foot. Sorry, I have to get under here. Sort of reposition. Okay. Put my needle down, put my foot down. All right. So now it's back where I want it to be. One of the things you want to make sure when you're doing the binding is if you pin it every once in a while, you can kind of keep it in position a little bit better. The biggest thing is you don't want to pull it because this is the width of your fabric. This has stretch. Okay. We don't want it to actually stretch. So we're not gonna let it. All right. So I'm not going to pull on it all, and I'm going to keep it in position and then just keep moving pins as I go, so that it stays where I want it to. And like I said, just using the side of my foot as the 1/2 inch guide, which works totally fine. This is the one place, though, that you do want to be really consistent because you'll be able to tell, and especially as you're working with the Embrace. And then I'm going to eyeball it again at the end as I get closer. I see where my 1/2 inch is. So if you are a new sewer and you can't eyeball 1/2 inches as well yet, you're totally welcome to just measure that.
There's a question about making the binding wider, and I'm gonna see if I know something about something.
Okay.
If you decided that you wanted to make the binding wider, would it be appropriate to then do a top stitch?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, so if the binding was wider,
like a 2 inch,
a 2 inch wider, or
binding.
maybe even a 3 inch, make it really wide all the way around, then because it would only be attached to the Embrace all the way back at that seam, would you want to maybe add another line of stitching?
Well, when we come back around to the front, we're going to tack it down again.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah. So you will. I
guess I was thinking about a third line.
Out
at the fold.
Oh, maybe. Okay. I think it would probably depend on the Luxe Cuddle that you used, because some of them will be fluffier than others. Usually what we do if we want to do a larger one is we end up, because this 1/2 inch seam is going to come around and we've got just about 1 inch here that's going to come up and over that will give us our inch. So a lot of times what we do, and we've done this with a couple other things, is that we cut it really wide. If we want to do it at 1 inch binding here, then I would actually move this over to the inch line and sew it there. And then I'd have 2 more inches on this side. So I would cut a 3 inch wide binding that would flip over. And then all of that comes in here. Because part of it is we want all of that fabric to be in here. You want your bindings full, is what they call that. So you want this full of fabric underneath there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a little quilt information as well as, cuddle sewing information. So you would, and definitely if you were doing that with a Cuddle 3, which you can use to bind as well, you would want to do like an outside, like that top stitch near the edge would really make a difference in keeping it flat and looking right. So yeah, it would depend. Okay, so we're just going to keep going. You saw I pinned this again up here. I've got my little pin in place. I'm going to keep kind of just moving the same pins around. I like the pins in comparison to the clips for this part of it because the pins hold it in position better. They can't move on me. And the clips tend to like to move on me a little bit. So after I'm done with this whole thing, then we'll check it, make sure that everything is covered on the front as well.
When you were cutting this weave for this binding, what did you cut it with?
You will see that there are. Where is my join? Did I go over the join yet? No, did I? Where's the join? Here it is. So one of these is actually cut with something. Here we go. This part here was cut with the blade, which is why there's more stuff fluffing over. This part was cut with the rotary cutter.
Got it.
Yeah. So
either or.
Either or. You probably shouldn't combine them, but I wanted to see what the difference was when I was cutting it, how much fluff it would get difference-wise. This one is actually one of my favorites because you can rotary cut it, and it's not as, the fibers are not as fine, so you can kind of shake it off more like a Cuddle 3. And I like that. I like the density of it. Oops, I didn't need to backstitch there. And I really like the way that it works. So this one you could actually cut with either one, which I did. Also, a rotary cutter is really fast and it's not so messy. So there. And we've talked about it before. If you cut with the with any of them, actually, it's a good idea to vacuum. Use a little hand vacuum up your mess, and you can always throw them in the dryer for just a couple of minutes with a washcloth and get rid of all of that cuddle dust. And that is very true for your bindings as well as any of your strips or whatever you're working with cuddle. It makes a big, big difference. Because we really do want to get as much of that mess off before we bring it to the sewing machine. One of the more common questions I get is, does it ruin your machine? And it absolutely does not. But you definitely want to get as much of the cuddle dust off as you can before you bring it to the machine. And that's just for you and your machine's sake. All right, so now we're going to go over this little hump. I'm going to try to flatten it as we go over. I'm just going to hold my fingers there. All right, one more corner. And do the same, just pin it and keep on sewing. Eyeball my about a ½ inch. So if this is the same thing that we were talking about. Otherwise, if you wanted to do a larger binding on it, this would be the same place that you would adjust this difference in when you stop sewing. So if you were going to do that one that was 1 inch wide, you would stop 1 inch from the corner and do your 45. Okay, so all of those things sort of get factored in.
Got it. There's a domino effect.
Exactly. You change all of it. Yep. Check. So this is where we started, and this is where I want to stop. So I'm just going to take my pin out, and I'm going to put a pin here. So I'm going to let that tail loose, let it be free over here. As I come around, I'm going to stop just about here so that I can put my tails together. So I'm going to do the same thing, push it up, push it back down, and then get it pinned in position so it doesn't move anywhere. Again, that little fold is down just below there so I can see the cut edge. I'll stick it back in here. Okay. Rotate things around, and remember that's my stopping point. So I'm just going to sew down to that. Okay. It doesn't have to be exact, somewhere around there. We'll cut the threads. All right, and then come on over here. So at this point, I've got it all the way around. I could do a little double check before I finally finish up and make sure that I've actually caught all of the fabric. It's easy to miss some of it sometimes, so I can see that all of the raw edge is within my seam allowance, which means when I pull it over, it'll all be hidden. I can check the back. Make sure I don't have any parts that the fabric's moved. That's really the thing about basting it, is if I do that first, it's less likely for one of those fabrics to shift and show. All right. That's so pretty. Look at that. All right. I'm happy. All right. So now what I want to do is I'm going to cut this tail. And I'm just going to cut it right along. So most of the fabrics I will cut from the back. This one, when I'm cutting these vertically, I'll cut from the front so I can just cut it along one of those ridges. For this one, it's not quite as necessary because that's going to go away anyway, but it's kind of a good little habit. Okay, so now I've got my tails. I'll lay these out. Make sure that this is nice and flat. Okay, and I'm going to combine these tails. So this is a part that people often get a little bit confused. Let me move this up a little bit. Okay, so we want these to come together at a 45-degree angle so that they're nice. I like to give myself a little bit of room on either side of this. If you're making the larger blanket, I would give yourself even more. Like I've made this maybe about 6 inches. Yeah. So normally about 8 inches or 10 inches is good. You'll have a little bit more wiggle room. This is a small blanket, so I just left myself a little bit. If you are doing this on your board, this is a great place to practice because you can straighten this along the line. And then I can make sure that this is going straight down and then this is going straight up from there. All right. So this is really important, is this 90 or the 45 right here. And this is a great way to be able to practice, is to use the lines on your board. Okay. So now we're going to combine these. One of the things that happens is sometimes when people put them together, they put them right up to each other and then they try to sew them. Well, then what happens, because it's a knit and a plush, it actually is too much fabric on the front. So what I do is I give myself the tiniest little gap, so that then if I push it, they're pretty close. And I'm like, okay, they almost touch. I can see it under there, which means I can stretch it just the tiniest bit. So now I'm going to take it and I'm actually going to do it this way. I was trying to hope I could do it where you guys could see it, but I can't. It doesn't want to grab it because it's too plush. So I've just put a pin where that fold is. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to kind of come underneath here and pin through the fold. Okay. So now if I fold those back, they're back where I want them to be. Then I can take these and I can make these match up. Oops. Except I pinned it through the darn blanket. Only one of them though. Okay. So now I can get these and I can feel them where they're going to match. So I wish I could show you both sides at the same time and try to flip it. Okay, so here's the pin, and I can feel them. I want them to match up and be at 90 degrees from each other. So I just kind of have to fiddle until it works, and then I'm going to stick a pin right in here. What I'm going to do is check it and like, okay, this is going to be a straight line. We're good. I think it's going to work. I can lay it down here. I'll stretch it just a little. It's going to fit in just fine. So I can see that's going to fit in there. Okay. Now I can go sew that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it, fidget, take my pin out there. What I want is these. So this way, if you have a little bit more length, it's a little bit easier. Okay. And now I can use the lines in this fabric to also tell that I've got it at the right angle. Okay. So check it there, check it there. Okay, and now I've got my pins again, just like I did the other one, where I'm going to sew from this corner to this corner, and it's going to lay down flat. All right. So if that didn't make sense, you could definitely watch the rerun. Okay, do it again. It takes some practice, but it actually isn't too hard at all. Okay, so this to me is actually like the hardest part of doing the binding, is just trying to get all these things lined up in the right way and then getting it over here and underneath the machine. So it's definitely not hard, but it's the most like fidgety little part. Okay. So again, I'm gonna put my needle down, make sure that it's right at the join of those two corners. I'm gonna come in. No. All right, I guess we're okay. All right, and so over to the other corner. Like I said, if you need to mark that with your pen, go right ahead. Just follow the little line. Okay, so now we've got that seam. Again, I'm going to check it. Make sure that it's going to lay down flat. If you're like me, you've had this twist before and then it didn't work and you have to take it out. So it's easier if you test it and then go back. Okay, so cut off that little seam allowance. Do the same thing here. Okay, throw those away. And now you can see we didn't have too much mess that comes off those. All right, because I was careful and it's not a super messy fabric. Okay, so now I'm going to get that back in here. And I'm going to pin this a few times because I want to make sure that it stays nice and even and flat. Okay, so that's the way we want it to be, is that I have to like pull this just slightly to get it to fit. Okay, if you have too much on the top side, if you have too much on that cuddle, it will totally buckle and it's sort of frustrating. You can usually get it to kind of work in and be okay, but you might end up with a little pleat up here, which if you don't have to, don't do it. Okay, so now we'll put it back under there and stitch it across. Okay, so we just want to overlap. So I overlap what I sewed before. Get over here, take my pins out. I'm going to make this kind of feed under that. And I'm going to go back and make sure that I'm going to meet up with that stitching line that I started with. Go over that for a little while, and then I can cut my threads. All right, so there we go. Sewn all the way around. Okay, now we get to do the top stitching part. So this is the part that always kind of confuses people because they really think that you can't do a raw edge binding, but you absolutely can. Let me find my clips. I think, yeah, my big clips aren't up here and I'm not sure where they're at. So you can use your regular Wonder clips or your big Wonder clips if you want to. And all you're going to do is pull this around so that it comes just past the seam you just sewed. And you're going to clip it in place. Okay, so this should just kind of meet it and go just the tiniest hair past that. All right, so the first part, you can totally stick a pin in here so that it will stay and you can get started. The rest of it, I'm just going to clip it and just try to be careful as I go. This is when I am going to grab my stiletto and trying to see how close to, running out of thread we actually are there. I think I might just play some thread chicken and see what happens. If we have to change it halfway through, you guys have been warned. Okay.
Go speed racer, go.
That's right. So I'm actually going to just clip a little bit at a time. Usually I clip 10 to 15 inches at a time. I do that and then I move my clips and I'll do clip the next side or I'll clip the next way down the side. I don't like to clip the entire thing at one time because things will shift and move and then it just adds weight to everything by adding the clips on there. So if you are more comfortable clipping everything at once, you absolutely can. It's just not how I like to do it. So I'm going to stick this underneath the foot and then we're going to go ahead and change that stitch. So we're going to change it to a zigzag, just a regular zigzag. You could absolutely do a serpentine too if you wanted to. All right, and I'm just going to change this so that it is a 5 wide and 5 long zigzag. So it is a really big zigzag and it's going to work out beautifully because it's just going to hold down just the edge of it. So as we're stitching this, I'm going to start just the tiniest bit back. I like to start in that seam allowance and stick my needle down. Make sure I'm going to catch just the edge of this. Okay. And I'm going to catch that right in place. So I'm going to catch we'll do a little lock stitch. Then I'm going to take this pin out because I really don't want to catch that anywhere. And then I'm just going to try to grab the edge of my fabric and guide it through here. The nice thing about the walking foot is this edge over here, this little bar right here, is basically where it's going to aim for. So if I'm keeping my fabric so that it will run right along there, it's going to work out perfect. Okay. So I can just kind of watch what I'm doing. Come right along here. Use the stiletto to hold it in place, kind of guide it toward it. The stiletto makes a huge difference. So this is the stiletto by Annie, and it will clearly lets me have a lot of power over the fabric that a regular stiletto doesn't let you do. All right, I keep one hand behind, one hand in front, and just guide it all the way around. And that's what we're going to do. All right, do you have any other questions in there?
Oh, I've probably missed 100.
Okay.
There's a lot of folks watching right now.
Can we get to the private chat thing from there? Doesn't look like it, huh?
I don't think so.
Oh, no? Okay. Just trying. So if you have another question, you know, maybe pop it up there. Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to work my way around this. Yeah, it's a whole different thing not being able to look up and see see it all. I got so used to it so quickly, you know?
We'll get your monitor back next week.
That's right.
Sorry.
That's all right. These things happen. Yeah. Computer decided to just, you know, freak out. Like I said, about, you know, 30 seconds before we went live. All right. So as I come down around here, I want to make sure, and I will fully admit this is the part that it will often go a little bit sideways on me and I won't get it in the right place. Okay. So when I am trying to be very careful with this, I'll show you what I do is I will actually come down here. I will stitch all the way here, make sure I'm catching it. I will do a little lock stitch and I will take it out. And then I can do the next one. I'll show you the next time not doing it that way. But this way I can make sure and get this all caught really nicely. Let's get that little thread out of there. Okay, and I can kind of pull this back, fold it over, pin it in place as I did before, and do a couple of clips here. Okay, so I'm just trying to pull it, make it nice and flat, get it into position. So you want to be really careful you're not twisting this as you go too. All right, but you can see, look at how lovely that looks. Okay, I'm going to go all the way around this and see what we can do. All right, and don't forget that if you share the video, you'll be entered to win. We will have a winner at the end. And they will win a kit to make a blanket. I'll let you choose the binding, whether you want the original binding or this binding. And then Elisa will send you an iron. How great is that? Okay, so I've just started over, done the same thing exactly on this one. We're going to work our way down this edge.
If you are, because you're able to, sorry, I'm framing this question, reframing this question, you're doing the zigzag on the raw edge. Mm-hmm. Is there a difference in how that acts when it's going with the grain or against the grain, the stretch in this case?
The stretch is always going to be the same on the this because it's cut with the fabric. So, but it will change if you are doing it on the cut side or the side that the nap goes toward. They'll behave a little bit differently. It will make a difference though, and you'll get some weirder naps. This one is lovely. Like I said, this is my favorite one to do bindings with. I think it looks awesome. I also don't have to come in here and fluff up any stitches because they're already just sort of stuck in there and they hide really well. So this is sort of a lovely way of doing it. You can see on the back what that looks like. I often forget to show you guys the back. So on the back, you can see it gets shoved down in there and you can come back in here with the stiletto and kind of fluff that up. Okay, and get that to all hide. But honestly, it hardly shows at all in the weave. The weave and the chenille are basically the same thing, and they will both do this. But yeah, the nap can definitely play an issue with all sorts of things. With this, it's not so much because your binding is always the same direction. Really, that will come into play when you're stitching down the side. If we made this out of cuddle, stitching it this way would be easier. Stitching it against the nap will be a little bit harder. Okay, it'll want to fight you just a little bit more. All right. Okay. So I do want to, you can see this wants to pull up. And so what I kind of do is I kind of stretch it into place, make it plop down, and then I'll stab it in position. This is really important, is that you're getting it just past that little line and that it only goes just past that little line. So don't worry that it's not pulling over much further. It's not supposed to. Okay. So this is exactly how it's supposed to work. You can also make your binding a tiny bit bigger, and I know a few people who make it at 2 inches, but I like it where it just barely bumps up to this line. So 1 3/4 is what I use. Okay, so when I get to this corner here, I'm going to show you how you can do it just in the machine. I just have I have less luck getting it perfect every time this way. So when I'm doing them for gifts, I'll often do it all the way, take it out, reform out the corner. Just because I want it to be perfect. All right. Okay, so we're going to come along here. Now as I get closer to this corner, what I can do is tuck my little threads in there, and I pull this up, fold it over, clip it down into place. So now as I do that, what I have to do is kind of manage this corner as it goes underneath the machine. Okay, so I have to take my Wonder Clip out, and I'm going to use my little stiletto and just hold it in place, help it kind of get underneath the foot there. And then I'm going to turn, pivot. Oops, see, that's what happens, is it just tends to move on me. All right, so if you have that problem, that is why, and you can do a little trick that I did on this corner, which you can see didn't get that problem. Okay, so there we go. That was perfect example, and I didn't even mean, I was trying to get it. I was trying to get it right. We'll try it on the next corner, and I'll see if I can do it. For some reason, it just shifts over, and I have a really hard time keeping it exactly in position. So that is some knotted up stiletto right there.
What happened?
I don't know. I was like, my stiletto is stuck. Okay. So if you're getting off the line just a little bit, you can just, you know, lift things up, shove it into place, keep going, and just try to keep an eye on things. All right. I'm going to put a couple more clips in there as I work along here. Try to keep this in position. So when we get to this part, this is a lot of fluff right here, and I tend to kind of cut it out just a little bit. You'll just keep it a little bit flatter on that edge as you go over it. If you're really struggling with it, you can definitely cut a little bit more out, but use that stiletto. I'll show you when we get there, because those little parts, it gets real thick. I mean, it's, I don't know, 4 layers that you're going over right there. More than that, but it's a lot. Okay. So you can see when you're watching what I'm sewing here too, a lot of times you're like, how do you see what you're sewing? I'm like, well, you kind of don't. You just aim. And that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just keeping that raw edge along the line, I hope, and stitching it down. So if you are just learning how to do this, this is a time that you use matching threads, and you'll be doing lots better. And that's kind of a good way to add a little safety check in there, is to just use matching threads. So on this one, I have the little gray thread. I could see that a little better. So if I used a white thread on there, you'd never see it. Okay, the gray thread hides pretty well though. Look at, we still got thread on there. I'm very excited. We got one more side to go. We might actually make it. I'm kind of excited. All right. So this corner, I tried the tactic. It's always about trying things. So this one, I stuck a pin in here. I'm going to see if it'll hold it as I get a little closer. And then I need to stick a clip in here. Okay. Then I'm going to do this. I'm going to stick a pin in this direction. See if we can get this to hold. So we'll see as we come around the corner. Are we going to do it? Oops. Okay. Nope. Missed it again. Look at that. See? I'm telling you. How many of these have I made? Like, I really have learned to just, like, I just take it out, go to all the way to the end. I don't know why it's hard for me, but it is. So if it's hard for you too, you know. For some reason, it just wants to sway over right there.
So what are we going to do about that?
I just stitch all the way to the end like I did the first one. Take it out, refold it. So you can absolutely do it under there. And I know people who do it and do it fine every time. And for some reason, it's a struggle for me. So it's all right. All right. Because the rest of it works fine. And then just those little That little edge, it just wants to sway over just the tiniest bit for me. I have had people ask if you could use like a glue basting on this. I wouldn't recommend it. It sounds like a pain to do. I do glue basting on cotton bindings, but this one, because you can't press it or anything, it just seems like it's not worth it. I have thought about using Wonder Tape at the corner. And so I might have to try that sometime just so I could be, I want to say faster, but I'm not sure if it's faster to actually, you know, put the Wonder Tape in there or to just stitch to the end, take it out, refold it. So for me, I just stitch the end, take it out, refold it, and then I get nice corners on it. Okay, we got one more. Oh, I can't retry it on this one. Never mind.
Too late.
It's too late. So
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 magnificent corners.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 magnificent corners and 2 that are a little not perfect. Also, you have to remember that anybody who's going to enjoy this little blanket doesn't really care if there's a tiny bit of thread showing up at the corner.
Also, the little that's just going to spit up on it.
Right. They really don't care. They're just like, oh, look, it's a soft edge. Okay. So now as I get here, I can get to the corner. I'm just going to hold that down, get it in here, do a little lock stitch, and then I'll cut my threads. All right. So I did have on my other one, I'll show you. So let me cut my thread tails are pretty short. They just hide in the nap. That's pretty funny. Okay, so they're in there somewhere, I swear. All right, so that's how this one turns out. Pull that open for you guys so you can see it. So even the 2 non-magnificent corners are fine. All right, if I wanted to, here's one. So if I wanted to, I could, yeah, see, that's a good example right there. If I wanted to, I could take these few little stitches out and I could come back over and fix it. And I'm actually going to show you really fast how I would do that because people always ask about taking stitches out. I realize I don't have any reading glasses up here, so let's just hope for the best, guys. So what I do is I come in here and I'm just going to clip, and I can push until I kind of feel it start to cut the threads. Okay, and I just come in between these things and cut it. So trying to find the thread on top of here to take that out, that's some crazy making right there. And it's gonna, yeah, make y'all a little nutso if you try too hard. So don't, okay? Just go in between the fabrics and cut them there. And then I can get them. Now I can take this back to my machine. I'm just gonna do that real fast. And I'm going to pin it into place a little bit better and re-stitch it. Okay, so that little fix is not going to take me much time or hassle. I'll lock my stitch. I'll hold it much better this time. We'll see if it works. It's worked before. I've totally made this fix a few times. All right, there we go. Now it's all better. Nobody will ever know that I didn't get the corner right the first time. Okay, so that's the way that works. You can see there's the back side. Get those threads clipped. Should have held my tails when I started. Sorry. Okay, so you can see on the back it will show a little bit more because we're top stitching over where it's already been stitched down. But you just come over, fluff that guy up just a little bit with your stiletto, and all of your stitches are totally hidden. It's kind of magical. Let me show you with the hide what that looks like, or with the Galaxy, excuse me. It's very similar to hide, but that's the way this is. So you can see this I've fluffed up. I use the gray thread in there. I can kind of just come in here, pull it out of there a little bit extra. Okay, and it will hide in there. So this is one too, like I use the gray thread specifically so you can see it. But if you really wanted this to hide in there, you would just use the thread that matched. I would suggest you use a polyester thread on this part of it because this is stretchy and we want it to have some good stability. On the back, this is what it looks like. I use black thread here because I didn't change my bobbin. And I was just making a sample. It was fine. Okay. And then if I go ahead and I just fluff up those stitches or fluff up the fibers over the stitches, it totally hides that as well. And then that looks nicer than that originally did. Okay. So you can see this is what it'll look like after you fluff the stitches. It looks much nicer. All right, so that's how that works. I like the weave a lot. That's what this is. I like it because I don't have to do all that fidgety little extra stuff. I like the way that this looks a lot. I think that's just so pretty. And the fact that I didn't have to do any of the fluffing on here and it looks that good is kind of amazing. Okay, pretty good stuff. So anyway, that's my sales pitch on using weave for a binding fabric. I really like it, and I like it on this. So this is a little bit more of I want to say a grown-up kind of binding. It's not particularly, but this is a different look. So you can use like the ginger color that will totally match with the little foxes, or use the gray that will match with the trees, whatever you want. All of the different, you can use all sorts of different fabrics with it, and different coloring. So whichever one you like. Okay. All right. So we have a winner, and I can't see the winner. So the winner is
Melanie N.
Melanie N. So thank you very much for watching Sew Together Tuesday today, and for sharing it with your friends, your sewing companions. We really appreciate you spreading the word about Sew Together Tuesdays. It's very fun. So if you contact us send us a private message and let us know your mailing address and your phone number. And if you could let me know which binding you prefer, then I will send you fabric so that you can make a blanket just like this. All right, super easy. Again, the pattern is on our blog. So if you go to the blog, you can find the download for the pattern and some additional tips and stuff that we've talked about today. You can also go to our blog and find the ruffled edge blanket, which is just the different version of an Embrace blanket that uses the Embrace for a ruffle as well. Okay, so lots of different ways that you can do this. The Embrace is great to work with, and I hope you'll give it a shot, because it's really wonderful. It has a nice weight. Oh, we had one more thing before we go. The scraps. Remember at the end, like when we cut stuff off, it's not quite square.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things that I really like to do, and a Hawk's probably gonna be like, oh, that's where those came from, is I like to make little washcloths out of them. So this is also 3 layers. This one has been washed and then dried a little bit, so it's a little crinkly. Okay, I just take the 3 layers, I cut them the same size, serge those edges, and use it as a little washcloth. So this is a little bit reminiscent of diaper cloths from, like you'd use like the old diapers and cut them up and use them as rags. It has kind of the same feel because it's the same sort of fabric. Once it's washed, it has a real kind of puffiness to it that's really delightful. So I love this stuff. I use it for all sorts of things. It's great for garments and lots of other things too. Blankets are what we're talking today. Thank you so much for joining us and getting through the little bit of, technology struggles, because they just happen. I can't control everything, unfortunately. So thanks so much for being here. We will be back next week. I have the project. Where is it? Oh, here it is. We're going to be back next week, and we're talking about panel quilts. So we're going to show how to make it. I'm going to see if I can get it open. I can't really hold it up because of my bum shoulder, but I'll hold up a little bit. So this is what we're doing next week. Okay, so super cute little blanket. We're going to talk about how to use a panel, add a border to it, and make it a big self-binding blanket. Okay, so that'll be really fun. We'll talk about different panels that we've got. We're specifically using, this one is the project that we did for next week. And I'm just going to keep cuddled up in my little blanket. So next week we'll be back. We'll be making this. So I'm looking forward to that. And until then, happy sewing. Bye.